Okay. It is Thursday, January 30th. We discuss the Jets making a few coaching hires. We discuss Bronny James' performance for the Lakers 2 nights ago. We have an update on the search for a name of the Utah Hockey Club. We had a bunch of MLB signings yesterday. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, so it was a relatively quiet day in the NFL yesterday. There were just a few hires made by the Jets. The only other real significant story I saw was a report that Matthew Stafford is planning on playing in 2025, but there wasn't really information beyond that. So take that as you will. Stafford plays in 2025. It'll likely be for the Rams. And there wasn't, much else going on in the NFL besides for the Jets announcing that they're hiring Steve Wilks as their defensive coordinator and Steve Heiden, or Heiden, however you pronounce his name, as their offensive line coach. And so Heiden used to be the tight ends coach for the Lions. So this is Aaron Glenn bringing his guy from the Lions, bringing some staff, bringing some familiarity with him. But the Steve Wilks hire, that has been speculated ever since pretty much 5 minutes after they announced that Aaron Glenn was going to be the next head coach. He was most recently the defensive coordinator for the 49ers in 2023. And look, he's got so much experience. He has head coaching experience with the Cardinals. He was the interim head coach 2 years ago for the Carolina Panthers. And so you can spin this as Aaron Glenn giving himself some head coaching experience on his staff. Look, Aaron Glenn is a former defensive coordinator. He was a defensive coordinator 3 weeks ago. You'd hope that even though he brings in Steve Wilks to run his defense with the Jets, you'd hope that Aaron Glenn, who had so much success, especially this past season with the Lions, you hope he has his handprint on this defense. And comparing it to the previous regime, comparing it to Robert Saleh and what he did for the New York Jets, Saleh was able to produce defensively for the Jets. The defenses under Robert Saleh were not the issue. The issue for Robert Saleh was he was unable to assure quality control over the offense as the head coach. And essentially, that just screamed that he's merely a defensive coordinator. He is no more than a defensive coordinator. And so, looking at this, frankly, the Steve Wilks hire doesn't make such a difference to me. I'm confident Aaron Glenn's defenses will be good. You have to be an especially bad head coach if what you specialize in, what you were previously a coordinator for, doesn't work out when you become a head coach. So I'm not worried about the defense. Or at least I'm not going to waste energy worrying about the defense. If I'm a Jets fan, I'm worrying about getting it right offensively, bringing in the right offensive coordinator to make sure it's not a circus the way it was under Saleh. To make sure that with all of the stud offensive weapons the New York Jets have, that those players are performing. If they bring back Aaron Rodgers, you want a coordinator who will make it work with him. Now you think to yourself, they weren't able to make it work with Hackett over the last couple of years. And that seems to be the guy that Rodgers should most likely be able to make it with, be successful with. So it's going to be an uphill battle. Aaron Glenn's made it clear that he wants Aaron Rodgers back. It is going to be not so easy for the Jets to figure it out offensively, to figure out a way to have a good offensive coordinator that's going to make the offense work, that's going to make sure they're incorporating Breece Hall in the right way, that's going to make sure they're incorporating Garrett Wilson in the right way. And if it's Rodgers, someone that Rodgers respects, and that respects Rodgers, and that knows how to properly utilize him in this offense. Okay, let's move on. Quick NFL day. Let's move on to the NBA. And this game happened Tuesday night. I didn't notice this story, but it's too good to pass up. And it's about Bronny James. You know, I wish I had this show when Bronny James was drafted. You would have heard, if you like my Joel Embiid rants, oh my gosh, you would have gotten gold from draft night when Bronny James went to the Lakers. So on Tuesday night, the Sixers beat the Lakers 118-104. And that night, the Lakers and JJ Redick decided that they were going to bring Bronny James up from the G League, and they were going to give him significant minutes. This has never happened before. Bronny James has been with the Lakers. He's played for them. He's got minutes, but they've only been garbage time minutes. They've only been late in games. And so this was going to be the first time Bronny James got real minutes with the Lakers. And he got 15 of those real minutes. He went 0 for 5 from the floor. He had 3 turnovers. And he was -9 in that span. Regarding the performance, JJ Redick said, maybe put him in a tough spot. Remember, -9, 0 for 5 from the floor, 3 turnovers. Maybe put him in a tough spot. Flying up yesterday, flying like in the sky, nationally televised game in Philly, and all that stuff. He didn't play well, but he's been playing great in the Stay Ready games. And he's been playing great in the G League. Flying up yesterday, nationally televised game, that's what you're blaming it on? Nationally, do you really genuinely think Bronny James is sitting there in the locker room before the game? Wow, this game's nationally televised. There's a lot of pressure on me. He probably didn't even realize it was on ESPN. If he can't handle that kind of pressure, why is he playing in that spot? No, this goes way beyond that. Go watch some of those highlights from the other night. I have never, ever, ever seen a player look less qualified to be in a professional sporting event than Bronny James looked in that game. Every chance Tyrese Maxey got, he ISO'd him. This kid is not an NBA player. Is LeBron insisting that he plays? The best player on my Division III basketball team would contribute more to the Lakers than Bronny James did or would. And so this is what LeBron had to say about it. Obviously, it's the first extensive minutes with us. We had the first game where it was just a moment, right, where you had the cameras out and your little publicity moment. Yeah, got it. And that was a great moment. Oh, so heartwarming. But tonight was his first opportunity to be with the big guys. I love it, by the way, with the big guys. Can you get a load of this guy? Be with the big club. And he's going to continue to use that and get better and better. Oh, so nice. So nice, LeBron. Coddling your son like that. Making him feel better that he was 0 for 5. Making him feel better that Tyrese Maxey made him look like a 5th grader. Go, I need you. Go. Watch the highlights. It's crazy to me. There's a play where he just brings the ball up, tries making a pass, and it was such a bad pass. I've just never seen anything like it. I genuinely have not. Stephen A. Smith had a good take on this. I liked what Stephen A. Smith had to say. On First Take, he said, I'm really, really trying to be respectful as I can possibly be towards LeBron James. A treasure to the game of basketball. I am pleading with LeBron James as a father. Stop this. Stop this. Yeah! Stop it! This nepotism is so clear. It's so sickening. Stephen A. Smith went on to say, we all know Bronny James is in the NBA because of his dad. The first game of the season opening night, the Griffeys in attendance, father-son duo playing in the NBA game for the first time. An absolutely positively wonderful story. Overall, I agree. It was a little cringy, but I agree. And then really sets in. We love what we're seeing from the G League because that's where you belong as your home. Your skills and get better, and you legitimately earn a spot in the Lakers rotation. 100%. 100%. Stephen A's spot on here. Now, people were pointing to the fact they had a 31-point game in the G League Friday night of last week. Okay, that's nice. All good and well. That doesn't make you qualify because you put up a nice performance in the G League. If that were the case, the player I was referencing before for my Division III basketball team would have been on the Detroit Pistons last season. It's crazy to me. And they lost the game. So he's a -9. And they lose the game by 12. So you'd think it's a little bit of a closer game. Maybe without Bronny. I don't know who they'd replace him with. But this Lakers team, who's in a nice spot right now, they're in 5th in the West. It's not like they're all the way out of it. They're trying to climb back in. And by the way, they've been more in play-in conversation the last couple of years than they've been in an actual playoff spot. It's not like they're like in last place in the West. So I just don't get it. What are we doing? What are we doing here? The Lakers are trying to go on a real run. Anthony Davis just got injured. And now you're plugging in Bronny. It seems like you're just wasting away a good opportunity. A game you probably could have won against not a great team. Not like Embiid was playing. Man, I cannot believe where we are with Bronny James getting this type of playing time. Okay, let's move on. So we have a little bit of an update to the De'Aaron Fox story. We spoke about that yesterday, how the Kings reportedly are going to try to trade him. Shams Charania reported yesterday that he has a preferred destination. The tweet, this was on First Take. I'm reading from First Take's tweet on X. League sources tell me that San Antonio Spurs are De'Aaron Fox's preferred destination. That's what Shams said. Honestly, I would love this so much. Imagine Wemby with another weapon. The NBA is so good when the Spurs are good. It was so fun when Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, that was a fun era. And Greg Popovich has obviously been out since November. He had a stroke. But this would be great. This would be so fun for the league if the Spurs can figure out a way to trade for De'Aaron Fox. The NBA is better when the Spurs are good. The NBA is better if Wemby is successful. Give me De'Aaron Fox to the Spurs. I love that. Okay. Let's move on. We have a couple pieces of hockey news today. Now, I find it funny that throughout the first month and change of this show, I've spoken about the Vancouver Canucks so many times. Part of the reason is because the main big player that's been spoken about, that's been rumored to be traded, is JT Miller. That's probably the biggest name right now that's getting the biggest attention. We've spoken about the fact that JT Miller, Elias Peterson, they do not get along on the Canucks. There are reports that maybe they'll trade both of them. The other day, their general manager, Jim Rutherford, chimed in on the reported animosity between the two players. He said, I felt like for a long time that there was a solution here because everybody has worked Everybody has worked on it, including the parties involved. But it only gets resolved for a short period of time, and then it festers again. And so it certainly appears like there's not a good solution that would keep this group together. Wow. Do you ever see GMs speak like this? I just don't ever see this. I feel like I never see this much candidness from a general manager, from an executive. We're talking about he continued. We're talking about two of our top players, certainly our two best forwards. Yeah. It can really be tough on a franchise, not only present but into the future. When you're planning on peaking this team into a contending team, and then you find out that that's not going to happen, or at least it's not going to happen with the group we have now, then you have to put together a new plan. I mean, frankly, this is wild. So, seems like JT Miller in all likelihood will be traded. And yesterday, JT Miller came out and said he didn't want to comment on those comments. But he seemed very upset. And he would not confirm that him and Pedersen's relationship is okay. So he essentially pleaded the fifth on that. And it is, to me, so unfortunate for the Vancouver Canucks. Their roster was so promising. Last year they traded Bo Horvat to the Islanders. But before that, they had Horvat, Quinn Hughes, JT Miller, and Elias Peterson, just to name a few. That's a really good core of players. That's 4 really, really good players. And so it's really unfortunate that they couldn't make it work with them. And it seems like they're headed towards at least a quasi-rebuild again. Which is so, so unfortunate. Okay. Let's move on. We have one more NHL story. The Utah Hockey Club announced that they will have voting at their next 4 games for their official name. First of all, I love that they're doing that. What they're going to do is they're going to have these iPads to vote on, and they're going to have guards at the iPads making sure people aren't taking pictures, because they're also going to show what the logos would look like for all three names. And their owner did this previously with the Jazz. They said it was such a success that they wanted to try it again. So the 3 names are the Utah Hockey Club. That's one. The Utah Mammoth is the second one. Now, I'm not sure. I saw some places said it was the Utah Mammoths, but I think it's just the Mammoth. The Utah Mammoth. Because that's what the team... that was from the official team report. So it seems like it's just the Utah Mammoth. And the last one is the Utah Wasatch. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Utah Hockey Club has a nice ring to it. It's kind of the same way Washington football team had a good ring to it before they changed to the Commanders. My number one choice here is the Mammoth. Wasatch is just, I don't even know what that is. Apparently it's a national park. I might sound like an idiot right now when I'm saying that. People might know exactly what that is and know exactly how to pronounce it, and I just sound like an uncultured swine. I just don't really want Utah Hockey Club, honestly. And so one of the big subplots of this was that there was initially a 4th name being thrown around that was actually the front runner, and that was the Utah Yeti, and that was the favorite. But the team in the NHL had copyright issues with Yeti coolers. They couldn't get the name. They couldn't get the rights to the name, and so they got rid of it. And now the final 3 contenders are the Utah Hockey Club, Utah Mammoth, Utah Wasatch. And if you are in the Utah area, make sure you go to one of their next 4 home games so you can vote on the next name of the Utah Hockey Club. Okay, let's close this out with some baseball news. Yesterday we got a flurry of reliever news. The first signing that happened was Ryne Staneck re-signed with the Mets. He's back on a 1-year deal, $4.45 million. Now, there were rumblings in the last week or so that a path the Mets might take, let me backtrack for a second, that there are 2 paths the Mets might take. that they might either try to get another top-end reliever, or they get maybe like a tier under that in Ryne Staneck, bring him back, Ryne Staneck. Bring him back, who was on their team last year, and then use money elsewhere. Now, first of all, let me address this. I don't like that we're allocating money. I'm a Stearns apologizer. I'm a Steve Cohen apologizer. I don't like this idea that we're allocating money. I get it that the payroll is really high. But when you're trying to compete with the Dodgers, you should not be allocating money from one place to another. Now, I like Ryne Staneck. I also don't think, ultimately, the way bullpens work out, I don't think it makes such a difference getting him as opposed to some other guys that were available. That I'll get to in a second. But going with this strategy, reading the tea leaves, it seems to be that they anticipate adding more payroll either with a starting pitcher or with a position player. And the position player that most people connected the dots to after the signing was obviously Pete Alonso. And so we'll see where it goes from there. The reason why I bring up starting pitchers is because later on in the day, it was reported that the Mets were in touch with the Padres about Dylan Cease and Michael King, and they'd have to take on salary for those players. So, seemingly the Mets are anticipating taking on money somewhere else. Right after that, the Tigers agreed to a deal with Tommy Kahnle, 1 year, $7.75 million, $7.75 million. He did not get Juan Soto's $775 million. And it's a nice move. This was a rock-solid move for the Tigers, adding to their bullpen, which was a strength. It is going to be a lockdown pen for them. And then, later on in the night, Carlos Estevez agreed to a deal with the Royals, 2 years, $22 million. Now, I had a problem with this. I was speaking to someone and talking it out. And this is what I came to. Here's what I don't get. This brings their payroll, their CBT, their luxury tax, up to $110 million. That's it. If they're penny pinching, if they're allocating money only to specific areas, why are they doing it towards the bullpen? They need bats. They don't have outfielders. Their outfielders performed so poorly last season, and it makes no sense that they're not going out and getting some sort of bat to play a corner outfield position. If they could spend, get bats. Doesn't make any sense that they're allocating this money to a closer. And frankly, this seems like another one of those Luis Severino deals. We're going to get to, I think we had two of them yesterday, where a team, a small market team, is just trying to spend money to show that they spent money. Another team that, in my eyes, did that were the Rays. Yesterday, they signed Ha-Seong Kim to a 2-year, $29 million deal. And look, Ha-Seong Kim is rock solid. In 4 years in San Diego, he had a .706 OPS. His calling card, though, is his defense. He was in the 85th percentile on outs above average. This player screams Tampa Bay. I think he's going to be spectacular for them. I think it's impressive that the Rays were able to convince him to sign there despite their stadium situation. Remember, they're playing their season, their home games, at George M. Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, the Yankees' spring training facility. I brought up the Luis Severino type deal before. This is the Luis Severino type deal. Just spending money to show that you spent money. Save face a little bit. That being said, I think he'll be great. I think both Severino for the A's and Ha-Seong Kim for the Rays, oh, that rhymes. I think they'll both be great for their teams. I just think it's funny that they're trying to put on a little charade. Oh, we know how to spend money too. It's going to be a good move for them. They will figure out a way to nicely utilize Ha-Seong Kim. I'm not nervous about that. I'm glad to see a top player playing in the American League, signing with the American League. It feels like we haven't gotten much of those. Actually, the two better signings yesterday, Estevez and Ha-Seong Kim, The two better players that signed both went to the American League. So we will see how those moves pan out. Okay, that's a show. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment on YouTube. Make sure you're following on Spotify, following on X. This is the Early Game Podcast. Have a wonderful day.